Maya had always believed that hard work would open doors, but the world had other plans. From childhood to corporate America, she faced silent judgments, stolen opportunities, and the constant battle to prove her worth. But when she realized she no longer needed validation, everything changed. This is her journey, from invisibility to empowerment, from being silenced to using her voice to shatter the barriers placed before her. Maya was only 8 years old, the first time she truly understood what it meant to be different. Growing up in Maplewood, a small, predominantly white town, she had never paid much attention to her skin color. To her, she was just a girl who loved playing double dutch, watching Saturday morning cartoons, and sneaking extra cookies when her mother wasn't looking. But one afternoon at the local grocery store, the world revealed itself in a way she would never forget. She had gone shopping with her mother, something she always loved because it meant she could help pick out her favorite snacks. As they walked through the aisles, Maya's mother, Angela, handed her a box of cereal and told her to put it in the cart while she grabbed something from another shelf. Maya obeyed, smiling at an elderly white woman standing nearby. The woman, instead of smiling back, wrinkled her nose and clutched her purse tightly. Maya noticed but didn't understand. Maybe the woman was just cold, she thought. But then, as her mother returned and placed more items in the cart, the woman leaned in and muttered under her breath just loud enough for Maya to hear. People like you shouldn't even be in this store. Maya blinked. Her heart thumped hard in her chest. People like you? The words were sharp, like tiny needles pricking her skin. She looked up at her mother, searching for an answer, but Angela had already heard. A deep sigh left her lips as she straightened her shoulders, turned to the woman, and spoke calmly, but firmly. Excuse me? Angela asked, tilting her head slightly. The woman scoffed, shaking her head. You heard me. I don't know why they let your kind just roam around like this. Maya didn't fully grasp the weight of what was happening, but she knew, from the way her mother's hand tightened around the cart handle, that something was very wrong. Angela, keeping her composure, had simply looked at the woman for a moment before speaking. My daughter and I have every right to be here, just like you. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have shopping to do. The woman mumbled something else under her breath and walked away, but the damage was done. The trip home was quiet. Maya kept replaying the moment in her mind, trying to piece together why someone would look at her and her mother that way. At home, she finally asked, Mama, why did that lady say that to us? Angela sighed again, pulling Maya close. Because some people think the color of our skin makes us less than them. But don't ever believe that. You are smart, you are beautiful, and you are just as worthy as anyone else. Maya nodded, but deep down something had shifted. The world, once simple and bright, now had shadows she hadn't seen before. She didn't have a name for it then, but she had just met racism for the first time, and she would never forget it. Maya had always been told that hard work and determination would take her far. She carried those words like a shield, pushing herself through school with top grades and earning a scholarship to a prestigious university. When she graduated with honors and landed a position at a well-known marketing firm, she felt like she was finally stepping into the future she had dreamed of. But it didn't take long for her to realize that the rules weren't the same for everyone. From the moment she stepped into the office, Maya felt the weight of being the only black woman in the room. Her colleagues were polite but distant, their smiles never quite reaching their eyes. In meetings, she noticed how her ideas were often ignored until a white colleague repeated them, suddenly making them worth discussing. She worked twice as hard, stayed late, and took on extra projects, determined to prove her worth. The promotion she had been eyeing for months finally became available, and Maya knew she was the perfect candidate. She had exceeded every target, led successful campaigns, and even mentored newer employees. When she submitted her application, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her work would speak for itself. The day the promotion was announced, Maya walked into the office feeling nervous but excited. She took her seat in the conference room, listening as her manager, David, spoke about the importance of rewarding hard work and dedication. Then he called another name. A white colleague, Brian, stood up to accept the promotion. Maya clapped along with the others, but her hands felt heavy, her stomach twisting into knots. Brian was a decent worker, but everyone knew he wasn't exceptional. He had often come to Maya for help, and she had willingly guided him, believing teamwork was essential. Now he was being rewarded for work she had helped him perfect. After the meeting, Maya approached David. She kept her voice steady, though her heart pounded. Can I ask for some feedback on why I wasn't selected for the promotion? David sighed, giving her a sympathetic smile. Maya, you're incredibly talented and we value your contributions, but Brian just seemed like a better cultural fit for leadership. Cultural fit. The words hung in the air like a thick fog. Maya knew what they meant. They meant she wasn't the right kind of leader for them. They meant she was too different. She thanked him and walked back to her desk, her hands clenched into fists. She had done everything right. She had played by the rules. And yet, it hadn't been enough. That night, she sat on her couch, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. Was this how it would always be? No matter how hard she worked, would she always be overlooked? A fire began to burn inside her. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew one thing. She would not be silent. Maya had learned to endure the subtle slights, the dismissive glances, and the unspoken barriers that held her back. She had swallowed her frustration when Brian took credit for her ideas and smiled through meetings where she was ignored. But nothing prepared her for the day she was made to feel invisible in the most humiliating way possible. It started like any other morning. She arrived at work early, determined to push forward despite the sting of the recent promotion loss. She had been assigned to lead a major client presentation, an opportunity to prove her value. For weeks, she had prepared, refining her strategy, ensuring that every slide, every talking point was flawless. This was her moment. As she set up in the conference room, the client arrived, a middle-aged white man in a tailored suit, accompanied by two of his colleagues. David, her manager, entered shortly after. Before Maya could introduce herself, the client turned to David with an outstretched hand and a wide smile. Great to meet you, the client said. I assume you'll be leading the presentation? David hesitated for a second before giving Maya a glance, then laughed. Oh no, I'll be here to support, but Maya is running the show today. The client's smile faltered as his eyes flickered toward her, his expression shifting into something unreadable. Oh, he said flatly. I see. The meeting began and Maya dove into her presentation, confident in her expertise. But the client barely looked at her. He directed every question to David, who, despite his initial attempts to redirect, eventually gave up and answered on her behalf. Maya felt her throat tighten, her voice growing smaller with each slide. She was right there, speaking, explaining, leading, yet she had never felt so invisible. After the meeting, David patted her shoulder awkwardly. Don't take it personally, he said. Some clients just feel more comfortable with someone they can relate to. Someone they can relate to. Someone who wasn't her. Maya locked herself in the bathroom and let the frustration simmer beneath her skin. She had worked too hard for this. How many times would she have to prove herself? How much more of herself would she have to shrink to make others comfortable? That night, she met her best friend Aisha at their favorite coffee shop. She stirred her tea absent-mindedly, staring at the steam rising from the cup. I don't know if I can keep doing this, she admitted. Aisha leaned forward. Maya, you don't have to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it. The problem isn't you. It's them. Maya exhaled, letting the words sink in. Maybe Aisha was right. Maybe the battle wasn't about proving anything to those who refused to acknowledge her. Maybe the battle was about refusing to let them break her. For the first time in weeks, she felt clarity. Something had to change, and she was ready to make it happen. Maya spent the weekend reflecting on Aisha's words. She had spent years trying to prove herself in a system that refused to acknowledge her value. She had followed the rules, worked harder than everyone else, and still found herself overlooked. But something in her was shifting. She was tired of waiting for permission to be seen. If they weren't going to give her a seat at the table, she would build her own. On Monday morning, she walked into the office with a new sense of purpose. Instead of shrinking herself, she decided to take up space. She stopped allowing her ideas to be stolen, speaking up in meetings even when others tried to talk over her. When Brian tried to take credit for her work yet again, she didn't hesitate. Actually, I developed that strategy, she interjected with a polite but firm smile. The room fell silent for a moment before the discussion continued, but Maya saw the shift. They were listening now. She also started documenting everything, every project she led, every successful campaign, every instance of discrimination. She kept records of it all. When another opportunity for promotion arose, she applied again. This time, when David hesitated and made excuses, she didn't back down. I'd like to know the specific criteria for this role, she said, looking him directly in the eyes. If I meet them, I expect to be given the same opportunity as anyone else. David stammered, unprepared for her directness. Maya, you're great at what you do. It's just, sometimes leadership requires a certain presence, you know? Maya raised an eyebrow. A presence or a certain kind of person? He had no response. That night, she updated her resume. She had already been considering her next move, and now she knew it was time. She started reaching out to other professionals in her field, connecting with Black women who had faced similar obstacles. Through them, she discovered a company that not only valued diversity, but actively promoted it. Within a month, she had secured an interview. Within two, she had an offer, one that recognized her worth in a way her current company never had. When she handed in her resignation, David looked genuinely surprised. We hate to lose you, he said, as if he hadn't been the one holding her back all along. Maya just smiled. I'm excited for what's next. Walking out of that office for the last time, she felt lighter than she had in years. She wasn't just leaving a toxic workplace, she was stepping into something bigger. She had found her voice, and she wasn't afraid to use it. That night, she and Aisha toasted to new beginnings. To standing tall, Aisha said, clinking her glass against Maya's. Maya grinned, to never shrinking again. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She was done waiting for change. She was going to be the change. Maya stepped into her new office with a confidence she had never felt before. The company she had joined was different. From the moment she walked through the doors, she noticed the diversity, not just in race, but in thought, in leadership, in opportunity. For the first time in her career, she wasn't the only Black woman in the room. She wasn't an afterthought. She was valued. Her transition into the new role wasn't without challenges. She had spent so many years fighting to be seen that it took time to adjust to an environment where she didn't have to. At first, she found herself bracing for the same microaggressions, the same dismissive attitudes, but they never came. Her manager, a Black woman named Simone, was not only a mentor, but a living example of what was possible. She encouraged Maya to step into her leadership potential unapologetically. Don't play small here, Simone told her one afternoon during a one-on-one meeting. You belong in every room you walk into. Act like it. And so she did. Maya took on bigger projects, mentored younger employees, and advocated for initiatives that promoted equity within the company. When a junior Black employee confided in her about experiencing self-doubt in the workplace, Maya saw herself in her and made it a point to support her, just as Aisha had done for her. Outside of work, Maya began speaking at panels and networking events, sharing her journey with other Black women navigating similar struggles. She joined organizations dedicated to helping young professionals of color break barriers in corporate spaces. Her voice, once silenced, now carried weight. One evening, she received an unexpected email. It was from Brian, her former colleague, the one who had been promoted over her. He wrote about how things had changed since she left. He admitted that he never realized how much she had done for the company until she was gone. He apologized. Maya read the email twice before closing her laptop. She had spent years waiting for recognition, for someone to acknowledge what she had gone through. But now she realized she didn't need it. She had already won. A few weeks later, Maya stood on stage at a leadership conference addressing a packed audience. She spoke about her journey, about the struggles and triumphs of being a Black woman in corporate America. She spoke about resilience, about knowing your worth, about refusing to let systems of oppression define you. When she finished, the crowd erupted in applause. Among them, she saw Aisha, beaming with pride. Later that night, as she sat in her apartment reflecting on how far she had come, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. She had fought battles she never should have had to fight, but she had emerged stronger. She had carved out a space for herself in a world that once tried to push her aside. She was unbroken. She always had been.